All right, so today we're really diving deep, like into the trenches with this whole LLMs for graphs thing.
Yeah, it's pretty wild stuff. Really gets the old gears turning.
Because we always hear about AI, like understanding text, right?
Right.
But what about understanding connections, like in a network or even just between molecules? That's got to be a whole other ballgame.
Absolutely, yeah. And the research you said, it's like the game is changing every single day.
And you've identified four main, like, frameworks or approaches that are sort of emerging from all this research,
Yeah, exactly. Kind of crystallizing out of the noise.
which I love because frameworks help me make sense of things.
Sure.
So let's break them down, shall we?
Let's do it.
The first one on the list is GNNs as prefix. I gotta say, that one sounds a little intimidating.
Yeah, it's a mouthful.
Like, what are we even talking about here?
It's simpler than it sounds, honestly.
Okay, good.
Think of it this way. You've got GNNs, right? Graph neural networks. They're already pretty good at understanding relationships in graphs.
They speak graphish.
Exactly, but LLMs, they don't speak that language natively. So GNNs as prefix is basically using the GNN to translate the graph data into something the LLM can understand.
Ah, so it's like giving the AI a phrase book.
Exactly, like a little Rosetta Stone for AI. And the cool part is this translation can happen at different levels. Like you can have node level or graph level tokenization.
Okay, now my brain is starting to think in graphs. This is good. But what do those levels even mean? Node level versus graph level.
So imagine you're looking at a social network, right?
Okay, got it. Facebook, the whole thing.
Node level tokenization would be like giving the LM the information on each person and who they're friends with.
So like their little corner of the graph.
Right, exactly. But then graph level, that's where things get really interesting.
Ooh, tell me more.
That's where the AI gets a zoomed out view. It's understanding the overall structure, the trends, like maybe identifying communities or influencers, more of a bird's eye perspective.
I'm getting it. It's like giving the AI different levels of detail depending on what you want it to focus on.
Precisely. You're getting it.
Okay, I feel like I can handle this next one then.
Hmm.
What about LLMs as prefix? Is that just flipping the script?
Kind of. Instead of the GNN doing the translating, this time it's the LLM's turn to shine.
So like language first, graph second.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about it. A lot of graphs have text associated with them.
True, like on social media, posts, comments, all that jazz.
Exactly. So in this case, the LLM analyzes all that text first.
Okay.
And then the output from the LLM, that's what gets fed to the GNN. It's used to actually improve the way the GNN is trained.
So the LLM is like the coach giving the GNN a pep talk before the big game.
Uh-huh. That's a great way to put it. It's like pre-training, but with language.
Okay, I'm following. This is way more fun than I thought it would be.
Right. And it gets even cooler.
Oh, there's more. Hit me with it.
There's this other framework. It's called LLM's Graphs Integration.
Integration.
Yeah.
Are the LLMs and the graphs finally tying the knot? Getting hitched.
Something like that. This is where things get really blurry because you're basically trying to combine LLMs and GNNs into one super-powered system.
Instead of just like working together, they're becoming one.
Exactly. Researchers are experimenting with co-training them, aligning their outputs, all sorts of crazy stuff.
That's like next level AI synergy.
Yeah.
But what about those of us who, like to keep it simple? Is there like an LLM's only option? Like, can they handle graphs all by themselves? No GNN needed?
That is the million-dollar question, and it's the final framework in our lineup.
Hit me.
So researchers are definitely trying to figure out if LLMs can understand graphs directly.
Brave souls.
Right. Some of them are using these really clever prompting techniques.
Ooh, prompts like what we use to get those crazy AI art generators to work.
Exactly. It's like trying to explain a graph without actually explaining it just by giving the LLM clues.
That sounds incredibly hard.
That's
Like
so
trying to
good.
teach someone to ride a bike by just making engine noises.
Haha, yeah, kind of. But hey, you never know. That's what's so exciting about this field. There's so much potential for breakthroughs.
True, true. But are they actually getting anywhere with this whole LLMs only thing? Or is it still mostly just like theoretical?
Well, that's where things get really interesting. And that's what we'll be talking about after the break. It's definitely not just theory. There's some really promising stuff happening.
Okay, good, because my brain was starting to hurt a little bit thinking about AI trying to decode graphs like it's some kind of secret code.
Well, hold on tight because it might get even more mind-bending.
Bring it on, I'm ready. But seriously, though, before we go full AI overlord on this, why should the average person even care about this? Like, is this going to change my life or something?
Oh, it absolutely could. And that's not even an exaggeration. This isn't about like making AI do parlor tricks with graphs. It's about unlocking possibilities that could completely change how we do, well, almost everything.
Okay, now you've got my attention. That's a bold claim. You mean, example, what kind of possibilities are we talking about here?
All right, let's start with something everyone cares about: health. Imagine a world where doctors can use AI to analyze your personal, like, biological network.
You mean like all the crazy interactions happening inside my body?
Exactly. And use that to create completely personalized treatments or diagnose diseases way earlier than we can now. That's the power of LLM's understanding graph.
Whoa. Okay, I'm getting a glimpse of the future here, and I like it.
And that's just one example. Think about recommendation systems, not the basic ones we have now, but ones that actually understand the connections between people's tastes and preferences.
So instead of just showing me what I might like, you would understand how my tastes relate to my friends, my families, even people I've never met but who share similar interests.
That's wild.
Exactly. It's like taking those people also bought recommendations to a whole new level.
Mm.
And it all comes back to LLMs being able to make sense of those complex relationships within graphs. Mind blown. Okay, you've officially convinced me that this is important stuff. So let's get back to that paper you mentioned, StructRAG. It sounds like it's here to solve a problem, right?
Right, because even when you can get LLMs and graphs to, like, talk to each other, there's still some big challenges.
Yeah, like what?
Well, think about it. You give an LLM a bunch of information. Even if it's in a graph, it can still struggle to find the right answers if that information is scattered all over the place.
Ooh, like trying to find a needle in a haystack, but the haystack is made of data points. Been there.
Exactly. And that's what a lot of these, like, traditional RAG models struggle with. The R stands for retrieval, by the way.
Retrieval augmented generation. Right, we've covered that before.
You got it. But the problem is, even with augmentation, if the information is fragmented, the results are going to be, well, fragmented too.
So inaccurate, incomplete, basically useless.
Pretty much. And that's where StructRAG swoops in to save the day.
Okay, tell me more. How does it prevent those AI meltdowns?
It's all about organization, really.
You mean like Marie Kondoing the data, tidying up for the AI?
Haha, kind of. Imagine instead of just handing the LLM a random jumble of information, you organize it neatly into folders, label everything clearly. That's what StructRAG does.
So presentation matters, even for AI.
Absolutely. The way you structure information has a huge impact on how well an LLM can understand and use it. StructRAG basically acts like a superpowered research assistant for the LLM.
Okay, so it's the ultimate research buddy. But how does it know the best way to organize everything? Did they feed it a bunch of those home organization shows or something?
Haha. I wish it were that easy. It actually uses something called a hybrid structure router.
Which sounds super complicated.
It does sound kind of intense. But it's actually pretty elegant when you break it down. Basically, it looks at the task at hand. What is the LLM trying to figure out?
Right, like what's the question it's trying to answer?
Exactly. And then it analyzes the data that's available and figures out the optimal structure to present that data to the LLM.
Optimal, meaning like the structure that will make the most sense to the LLM so it can actually, do its job.
Precisely. It's like choosing the right tool for the job. Sometimes you need a hammer, sometimes you need a screwdriver. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve.
And StrikeRAG is the AI equivalent of that giant toolbox that has, like, every tool imaginable.
Exactly. It considers things like tables, graphs, the visual kind, not the data kind, even algorithms and catalogs and chunks of information. It's got a whole arsenal of structures to choose from.
Wow, this is way more advanced than I thought. So how does this router become such a pro at picking the right structure? Like, did it go to structure school or something?
It's all about the training, really. They used LLMs themselves, along with a fancy technique called decision transformer with preference optimization, DPO for short.
Catchy.
Right. Don't ask me to explain how it works, but basically, they used it to train the router to recognize patterns and make smart choices based on the task and the data.
So it's like training a sommelier to pick the perfect wine pairing for a complex meal.
Now, that's an analogy I can get behind. The router is our AI sommelier, carefully selecting the best way to present the data to the LLM for maximum understanding.
I like where this is going. We've got our sommelier, the perfect bottle of data. What happens next?
So our sommelier has picked the perfect vintage, right? The data is organized, it's ready to be served.
And then, What does the LLM do with this beautifully plated information?
Well, it still needs to, like, digest it, right? That's where the next part of StructRAG comes in, the scattered knowledge structurizer. It's a mouthful, I know.
But it's descriptive at least. So it's
Yeah.
like taking all that organized data and making it even more palatable for the LLM.
Exactly. It's not just about having the right folders, it's about putting the right documents in the right folders, making sure the information is actually structured in a way that the LLM can use.
So we've got our sommelier, our personal organizer. StructRAG is really shaping up to be the ultimate AI assistant. But okay, once it's all organized, then what? Does the LLM just magically have all the answers?
Not magically, no, but it does have a much easier time finding them. That's the job of the last piece of the StructRAG puzzle, the structured knowledge utilizer. It's like the LLM's personal search engine.
So instead of just having access to the whole library, it now has a librarian who can point it to the exact shelf and book it needs.
Perfect analogy. It breaks down the original question into smaller, more manageable chunks, and then uses the structured data to pinpoint the exact information needed for each one.
It's like that friend we all have who's amazing at research. You ask them a question and they don't just give you some vague answer. They pull out the exact book, chapter, and verse to back it up.
Exactly. And the best part, it actually works. This research shows that StructRAG consistently outperforms other methods, especially when dealing with these complex, knowledge-intensive tasks.
So it's not just a cool idea, it actually gets results. That's what I like to hear. This is exciting stuff. It feels like we're on the verge of unlocking some serious AI superpowers here.
We are, but as Spider-Man's uncle always said, with great power.
That's great responsibility. Yeah, I knew that was coming. And I'm guessing this is where we talk about the potential downsides of all this amazing AI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because as impressive as this technology is, we have to remember that it's still in its early stages. And with anything this powerful, we need to be very careful about how we develop and use it.
Okay, so what are some of the things we should be thinking about as we venture further into this, like uncharted AI territory?
Well, bias is a big one. We need to make sure that these LLMs are being trained on data that's representative of the real world. Otherwise, we risk amplifying existing biases or even creating new ones.
That makes sense. The last thing we want is for AI to inherit our worst tendencies.
Right. And transparency is going to be crucial too. As these systems get more complex, it's going to be harder and harder to understand how they're making decisions. So we need to find ways to make them more transparent and accountable.
So we can trust them, basically. Because if we don't understand how they work, how can we be sure they're working for good?
Exactly. It's going to require a lot of collaboration between AI developers, ethicists, policymakers. Pretty much everyone needs to be involved in shaping the future of this technology.
It's a team effort, for sure. It's like we're navigating uncharted territory here. We're discovering these amazing new landscapes with LLMs and graphs, but we need to be mindful of our impact as we explore.
Well said. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I think the most important thing for listeners to remember is to stay curious. This field is constantly evolving. There are new breakthroughs happening all the time.
It's true, the learning never stops, does it?
Never. So keep asking questions, keep exploring, and who knows what amazing discoveries we'll make together in the years to come.
Couldn't have said it better myself. A huge thank you to our expert for joining us on this incredible journey through the world of LLMs for graphs. And to our listeners, thank you for lending us your ears and your curiosity. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into the frontiers of knowledge.
Yeah.
Until then, stay curious.